Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Amira Shatina binti Jafar. Me and my friends are going to present about the non-tariff barriers and the new protectionism. The trade restrictions that are imposed on the import of export of goods without the use of tariff are known as non-tariff barriers. The World Trade Organization (WTO) classified the wide range of non-tariff barriers, including import licensing, pre-shipment inspection, rules of origin, custom delays, and the other actions that obstruct or restrict trade. Non-tariff trade barriers are used by developed nations as a commercial tactic to limit their trade with other nations. Countries based on their judgment on the availability of commodities and the services import and exports, as well as the political ties they have with other trading partners. When deciding which non-tariff trade barriers to enact, development nations have the option to forego imposing additional tax on imported or exported commodities on other nations in favor of erecting non-tariff barriers that have a different financial impact. In order to fund original initiative of never ongoing expenses, nations said that come up with creative way to raise money. One of these tactics was the establishment of tariff which imposed limitation on imports and export of products and services. Most frequently, when the word protectionism is employed, it refers to the barrier in the international trade. Meanwhile, it started with the government availability to shield men from rivalry and the free market. Protectionism so start at home. The government aimed to protect males from the impact inflation through wage and the price regulation and the kind protectionism. The government used the rationing, a form of protectionism, to protect men against shortage. The same theory underpinned protectionism, domestic and international manifestations. The government must meddle in the market and make decisions for its citizens that they are apparently unable to make for themselves. Protectionist tactics are used in the global economic and monetary domain whenever the government politicians acquire the power to impose their benefit and ideal on other people locally. If we want to get at the current main cause of the current economic and monetary issue, we must start plucking at this root. In the event of the Donald Trump election as president, the world's largest company has shifted to the protectionism. A year after Trump took office, the government has taken steps to renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement, known as NAFTA, which was later named the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. In addition, the US and China have been engaged in the trade war, raising the import duty on one another frequently. A preliminary agreement to settle their dispute was reached by the two sides in January 2020. Nevertheless, the various tariff and the counter tariff are still in force as of that date. A consensus on what constitute a non-tariff barrier have been reached. The United Nations Conference on the Trade Development (UNCTAD) prepared this draft definition of ICWG. For those non-tariff barriers that influence most commonly the trade product in the region were chosen as the focus of the investigation. More than half of Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand import were made up of this product as 1994, accounting of approximately 70% of the Thailand import. NTB information was then compiled by the ASEAN Secretariat, which looked at the submission of the member countries at the Gate Trade Policy Review, as well as submission from the ASEAN CCI and the UNCTAD Trade Analysis and Information System database. The idea that the government has duty to look out and reach protect its citizen economically has led the domestic protectionism in the United States, which has always existed at the same level. However, it's recently grown alarmingly. Economic protectionism is a not new trend. In fact, it has been growing more quickly in this nation since the turn of the century. Even though there are increasing obviously symptoms of economic decline locally, it affects the protectionism policies applied abroad only now it's beginning to show. The essence of protectionism is compulsion. For example, some men expect and demand the government provide public program service and favor the certain citizens. But this will illegally protect men from the uncertain world, provide guarantees against harmful consequences change, such as services as the unemployed benefit, welfare handout, healthcare, business subsidies, and like other provided only expenses of other citizens and government by taxation. Complements to finance this service, since men do not like tax. The government resort to inflation as a method financing the expensive program. Thus, government must also complement to accept paper money, which government control and depreciate, but men dislike inflation too, and usually they demand that the price rises to be reduced and eliminated. Since today, the generalized rising price are simply an effect inflation, there can be no cure to rising price unless artificial creating of money substitute and the credited government is halted.
Firstly, thanks to Nur Amira Shatina for the wise presentation. Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Tun Al-Hadizul Hakim bintu Abdul Aziz. I'm from BA 2503E. So today, I will present about the types of protectionism, quotas, and effect of import quotas. As you can see, there are 4 types of protectionism. So today I will explain to you one by one. So for the first type of protectionism is tariff. Imports are subject to taxes or charge known as tariff. Imported goods become more expensive on the domestic market, which will reduce consumer demand for them. For the second type is quotas. Quotas are limitations on the volume of imports for a certain commodity or service during a specific time period. A non-tariff trade barrier is another name for quotas. Imported goods prices rise as a result of a supply constraint, decreasing domestic demand for them. So then, subsidies. The government provides tax credits known as subsidies to domestic producers. They cause a difference in price between what consumers pay and what producers charge. And for the last one is standardization. All imported goods may be subject to regulations set forth by a nation's government. For instance, the UK government might mandate that a specific percentage of leather be present in all imported handbags. Its measures tend to reduce foreign items in the market. Next, quotas or import quota. The import quota is a direct quantitative restriction on the volume of units of a commodity imported during a specific period. Is the most basic type of non-tariff trade barrier, on the same grounds as those for imposing import duties. Countries call for quotas. The most common policy objective of quotas are to reduce imports and shield home industries from foreign competition. We will focus on the protection issue we will focus on the protection issue rather than the balance of trade, just as we did with tariff. Import quotas have been implemented by developed nations including Japan and the European Union members, primarily to safeguard agriculture farmers. On the other side, quotas have been utilized in an effort to promote the expansion of manufacturing industries, but it is clear that the recurrent failure of protection to promote manufacturing has persuaded many developing nations to adopt free trade policies. So the last point that I will be present is about the effects of import quotas. As you can see, the graph besides me, so that based on the information provided, an import quotas reduce the consumer's surplus in the market for imported goods, while increases it in the market for the exporting country. In the import market, the producer surplus will rise, but in the export country market, it will fall. When a major country implements an import quota, national welfare may rise or fall. So I will show to you, this is the area that import quotas, the area we call quotas or import quotas. So that's all from me. Thank you for lending your ears to hear my presentation. So I will give a chance to my friend Alif Bazli to continue the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. I'm Alif Bazli bin Abu Ubaidah, and right now I will take over this presentation by continuing with comparison of tariff and quotas. The benefit from a tariff goes to the government that imposed the tax, whereas it is unclear who receives the rent from an import quota. This is a key distinction between the effect of import tariff and import quotas. Then, when assessing the overall effect of these policies, more minute distinction become important. A quota is preferred by domestic business in a sector seeking protection over other import restriction. The greater certainty linked to a quota's protective benefit can be used to explain this desire. In any scenario of shifting market dynamic, a quota convinces the domestic industry to impose a cap on import. The quota prevents consumer from switching to the imported commodity even if the indigenous industry comparative disadvantage worsen. The quota does, however, result in a reduction in the overall quantity demand by increasing the domestic price of a good. A quota cannot shield the indigenous industry from a shrinking market, therefore. Okay, now I will explain to you about what is the reason for protectionism. Protectionist policies are used by an economy to promote domestic investment in a particular industry. Tariff on the outside import of handbags, for example, would compel domestic manufacturers to invest more in purse production. Additionally, established overseas purse manufacturers will not pose a threat to rising domestic purse producer. Domestic consumer will be less benefited by protectionist policies than domestic producers, as they will have to pay higher costs for arguably worse goods or service. As a result, business tend to welcome protectionist policies and consumers generally detest them. So now, to conclude all this, protectionism and liberalization continue despite the end of globalization. According to the trade restriction theory paradigm of international trade cooperation, economic openness and protectionism have been constant since industrialization. Several factors cause worldwide collaboration and infection. Some models consider market size and economic competitiveness, but they don't rely on a single hegemonic organization. A new strategy's effectiveness depends on its spread through nation. As other nations adapt the same tactic, the distribution shift offering a new approach. Size competitive countries have a stronger influence on strategy distribution than small, uncompetitive countries. But the same variation can be seen among similarly large and competitive players. I think that's all from us, and thank you. Assalamualaikum.